Hello, and the biggest of welcomes to This Woman's Work, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing women, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that have led them to where they are today. Hi, I'm here today with Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Could you tell the lovely listener what it is you do for a living?
I'm a communications consultant, so there's very little I don't do in my working day.
Wow. Okay, so you've got clients and you work...
Yeah, so I've been working in this role for roughly 25 years.
Wow.
So it started out as straight up PR, so PR in the fashion business.
Yeah.
And, you know, as the years have gone on, I've progressed skills and upskilled. So, no day is the same, really.
Yeah.
And I think if you ask most communications experts, they will always say, you know, sort of, what do I not do?
Yeah.
It's very varied.
And just managing clients is probably the biggest part of it.
That's
isn't
right, yeah.
Tricky clients. I'm saying that having been one and done a similar thing myself. Okay, so before we go more into that, at this point I always then go back and say, okay, so Jen, at school, college, what were you like? What were your interests?
Okay, probably a little bit different to a lot of your guests, because I was pretty naughty as a kid. I definitely was against the grain. If you did sort of diagnose me at that time, I probably had all sorts of things going on.
Yeah, multiple spectrums.
But we left it undiagnosed. And I was wherever the fun was at.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of, it could have in some way led me to the career I have today.
Yeah.
But at school, all I could think about was when I was going to leave.
Yeah. So academia wasn't for you?
Academia really wasn't for me. And I think probably the teachers would have been quite happy to see the back of me too. I wasn't easy to teach at that stage. I just, like I said, I just saw going to school as a place where you have fun.
Yeah.
So that continued. I sort of left school as soon as I possibly could at 16. I went on to do something I went to college, and I really had no idea what I saw myself doing. So I sort of looked up a few courses. I thought, leisure and tourism.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I like to travel.
Yeah.
I like fun. So yeah, that sounds good. Let's go with that. So obviously, so I went off to college in Devon, and didn't really last very long. I was definitely still following the fun trail. So I realised very quickly that it wasn't really going to work. So I just really was inspired by the idea of sort of leaving this sort of quiet coastal part of the world, and seeing the bright lights of London. So I very swiftly sort of packed up my bags, got a friend to deliver me to London.
What did your parents say about this? Were they okay about it?
They were terrified, but there was nothing that they were going to say. So
you're what, sort of 17, 18 at this point?
Well, I was actually not even 17. In fact,
so just that first year of college?
Yeah. So college lasted a matter of months, and then I just...
You just knew,
I had to go. So, so I managed to get myself a job in a pizza restaurant.
Brilliant.
Just to sort of, to afford me a bedsit in Streatham is where it all took place.
Yeah, okay.
So I went from South Devon to Streatham, and I can tell you Streatham was quite a different place at that time.
Yeah.
If one of my children, for instance, right now asked me, I've got a 16-year-old now, if she had the same idea, I would be literally beside myself. I think at that, you don't really know an awful lot about the world at that age.
No.
You think you do. So I can understand why my parents were absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
It's sort of, that's where it all began, really. And I sort of, the pizza restaurant didn't work out. I'm not a great server of food, it turns out. It's just not really something I'm particularly good at.
Yeah.
So the sort of, I decided, right, that's it, I've got to move on from this job. So I literally managed to scrape the money together to buy myself a suit. I remember the suit so well. It was a pinstripe suit. It was grey. It was just, not
So this
great.
is what, like early to mid 90s? So
It was, exactly.
Yeah.
It probably
Which
would have been about
I'm just
94.
asking that because that would be so trendy right now. Have you seen all the girls today just walking around in their 90s stuff that we all wore in the 90s?
It all comes around, doesn't it?
Does.
And I just sort of took myself off on the train, and I thought, right, where am I going to go? Try and find a job, get a better job. I landed in Covent Garden, and I'd always quite fancied the idea of the fashion business. It kind of went hand in hand with the sort of person that I was at that time, which was probably a bit of a raver, to be fair.
Yeah.
Early 90s raver.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So, I thought, maybe I could go and check out some of these fashion stores in Covent Garden. So I went to 2 different places. The first stop was Paul Smith.
Yeah.
Which was an experience. And I felt absolutely fine to just strut straight up to he actually happened to be the assistant manager in the shop at the time. His name was James.
Oh gosh, wow.
And I sort of walked up to him and I said, are there any jobs going here? I'm looking for work. Just straight off the back. Here's my CV. And he sort of introduced me to the manager. It just so happened that there was a new shop being opened, which was the Paul Smith women's shop. It was the very first time they had presented women's wear.
Wow.
And I was immediately taken to meet the new manager of that shop. We had a very...
in the same store? So this was all in this...
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like his first, Paul Smith's first store on Floral Street.
Wow.
Before he was huge, basically.
Yeah.
It was the first time he presented women's wear. He has a women's wear product all over the world now. It was before he did a fragrance or any of those deals.
Yeah.
So it's a really amazing time to discover this brand. And, I pretty informally got a job there and then. Paul Smith was the best place that I could have ever started my journey, to be fair.
Wow.
The people that I met during that time, I still speak to today, and we still bounce off each other and pass work each other's way.
Gosh, wow.
It was a really amazing family vibe.
So how long? So you were just working in the shop, though?
So I was working in the store.
For how long?
4 years. So I worked in the shop for majority of that. But I had to sort of tell a little white lie because I was a bit too young really to have such a job.
Yeah.
So I sort of told them I was a little bit older than I was, like 1 year. So I had to have 2 21st birthdays.
So the whole time they thought you were that.
They did.
Yeah.
They
1 year is not. God, let's face it. At our age now, that's just nothing.
I mean, we do everything we can to say we're a bit younger.
Yeah,
now
totally.
these days,
You were just ahead of the curve.
So then I sort of progressed. I realised, it was an amazing place to be, the House of Paul Smith. But I realised that my passion lay in sort of PR side.
Yeah.
I wanted to get off the shop floor and start the ball rolling on the PR game. So I did actually, towards the end of my time at Paul Smith, I was given the opportunity to work in the press office and do some work experience there.
Yes.
Side by side with my job in the shop. And it sort of all rolled on from there, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were then in-house for Paul Smith
So in our house for Paul Smith for literally a month or so.
Okay.
But then I actually got headhunted very quickly to go to a PR agency through somebody I worked with at Paul Smith. Actually, she left to sort of work at this new PR agency, Brower Lewis it was called.
Wow, so you're like, what, 21, 22 at this point?
21, yeah. So I just went over there, really, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. I never have been. So I literally started at the very bottom and just worked really hard.
Yeah.
I really worked hard because, of course, I hadn't had that sort of traditional training.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been to university.
And you were aware of that, so you
and
knew
I was
you
aware
had
of that, and I knew that I didn't want to do that. It wasn't my place. It wasn't my vibe. I just wasn't interested. But, you know, I suppose working in that way, starting from the very bottom and working your absolute arse off, I think that's the same thing, really, isn't it?
It is.
What I found by the time I was sort of 23, I surpassed a lot of my peers who were coming out of university.
Yeah.
We did amazing things. I mean, we had amazing clients. So we launched Jimmy Choo to internationally.
Yeah.
We had some fantastic, really, really sought after designers, like high-end catwalk designers who showed collections all around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a really, really fun start to the PR game, and just got my attention from the word go, because it was everything I wanted, really.
Yeah.
It was really fun, exciting, very different every single day. And then I progressed in that agency and managed to work my way up to account manager. And then I was headhunted again, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small industry, isn't it? So, you know, you do tends to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went then to another PR agency, which was a bit bigger, a bit more corporate. And we did all sorts of things there I managed a lot of the women's wear accounts. And so we were travelling around, you know, throwing shows for the different designers we looked after in Paris, Milan, New York. You know, it was amazing. And, you know, we did such a diverse list of clients. So I would look after the women's wear, you know, designers. But then in addition to that, I would be pulled into strategy meetings or new business proposals, because...
Yeah, so pitches and things like that, yeah.
And I've never felt like, you know, people get scared about what they're going to say, and I just blurt it out, which is probably not such a great idea sometimes. But it does really work well in settings where, you know, you really have to come up with amazing, like, one-off ideas.
It's going to be different.
That's really going to get their attention.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we launched the very first ever supermarket fashion brand, George Asda.
Oh yes, yeah.
So it's pretty groundbreaking. I feel that we kind of came up with all of the ideas, that the whole strategy that saw the complete launch of that brand.
Wow.
I mean, that was pretty amazing. You know, obviously it's crazy to think of the things that we did at that time, particularly as I've got such a big interest and focus on sustainability, and have done for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So,
well, back then Asda did not scream of it. It was very, well, it was sort of cheap and, you know, but...
Well, we didn't think about such things, which is absolutely crazy. I just don't understand where we thought everything was going to go. And then after that, a headhunting situation again.
Yep.
I went on to work with a really big shoe designer, Patrick Cox.
Yes.
Patrick and I worked sort of side by side for...
Oh, so just in-house then? You went in-house then?
I went in-house, yeah. I was... so Patrick... well, that was a really exciting time as well. I mean, he... obviously is a very, you know, he knows all of the film stars and the, you know, huge music stars.
Yeah. So
it was a very starry moment, I guess. We had some really fun times.
Yeah.
You know, I was responsible for his communications worldwide. So, you know, we were in Paris every other week. You know, we were presenting collections in New York on a constant basis. Like, it really was a very exciting time. Yeah. And then after the 4 years of Patrick Cox, I was pretty burnt out, actually.
Yeah.
Because it was, I was burning the candle.
Yeah.
At both ends, very much so. And lots of parties, lots of entertaining, lots of high life. It was a very high maintenance lifestyle. And actually, if the truth be known, I'm not a high maintenance kind of girl.
No.
I'm
like
very...
a good time, but you're happy for it to be...
Totally. But,
quite
you know,
relaxed.
the humble beginnings of Devon is just, it's ingrained in me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely the sort of girl that would turn up to a party, everyone's pristine, and I've missed a little bit of mud on my heel.
But it makes for good conversation, I bet, doesn't it?
It does, I guess, but always a bit dishevelled, unfortunately. I just realised, actually, Jen, this is all a bit crazy. Maybe it's time to do things your own way a little bit.
Yeah.
And at that point there, I just thought, I'm going to make this work for me a little bit better. So when people talk about work-life balance, I definitely I started forging that work-life balance right there.
So that's quite a while ago. So
It was
that's,
a long
again,
time
it
ago.
wasn't discussed really back then, was it really?
No. And by the time I left there, I was 30.
Yeah.
30. I just had my 30th, big 30th birthday party in a field festival.
Oh, brilliant.
And then I left Patrick Cox and I went freelance. I was probably one of the first people in my industry to go freelance and just decide I'm going to do this as a sort of freelance situation. So actually the month that I left and started doing my own stuff, I had the most successful month of my whole career, really, in terms of income. Yeah, I continued sort of working with designers.
But still in London? You stayed in London?
In London, yeah. Designers I had people, clients throughout Europe. Yeah, and I was sort of, at any one time, I probably had about 5 clients. Yeah. To sort of service.
That's still quite a lot though, isn't it?
Which is a lot. But, I was really good at spinning a lot of plates at that time. Yeah. And somehow you just get through all that and you just do it without thinking.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, it was 2 months into my freelance career that I realised I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Which was a very, very lovely surprise.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise and a shock to the system because I immediately had to stop being crazy party Jen.
Yeah.
And I needed to obviously look after this little thing that's in my tummy growing. So everything just stopped. I became uninvited by all of my friends. I was pretty upset about that.
Really?
It was an overnight situation. Oh, she's got to behave now. She's going to have to hang the party hat up for the little while. So, a lot changed. But so had baby and then little Mabel and quite a lot changed at that point. We all go through this.
I know. Especially seeing as you're self-employed technically at this point. So there's no mat leave, is it? There's no nothing like that. So
not really, no.
Did you just take a couple of months off and then or did you just
I took 6 months off.
Yeah.
And I just saved.
And didn't do anything.
Obviously I was aware that I was pregnant for a number of months.
Yeah. So you prepped for it. You'd prepped.
So I just saved and my other half, Mark, did the same and he continued working and so we kind of covered ourselves for maternity and then I was back to work at 6 months and just kept rolling really.
Yeah.
I know you have a little life in you yet. I know you have a lot of strength left. I know you have a little life in you yet. I know you have a lot of strength left.
At what point then did you think, okay, time to move back to the coast?
So what happened was I lost my dad, my maternal dad, and I'm half Portuguese. He was in Portugal, and I had Mabel. Mabel was 18 months old, and he did die. So at that point there, I just felt like I really needed to try to look after my granny who was still in Portugal on her own.
Okay, yeah.
So myself and my husband and Mabel, we moved to Lisbon.
Oh,
actually,
wow.
Which was an amazing time.
Gosh.
I'm so pleased that we did it because we saw a lot of my granny, and then at the same time we just carved this beautiful bit of time out together. I was doing sort of a couple of days a week, I think, from Lisbon.
Wow.
And
and flying where you needed to go if you needed to go anywhere.
If I needed to fly in, I could do that. But on the whole, most of my work could happen right there in my apartment in Lisbon. So it was wonderful. And it was again, it was kind of quite early days in that whole idea that someone can work from remotely, from anywhere. So,
God, look at you ahead of the curve again.
Yeah. I mean, and that was all, like I mentioned earlier, like leaving Patrick Cox and really wanting to carve a better life.
Yeah.
And I guess that is something we should all be doing.
Yeah. Wow.
Is this working for me? Is this working for myself, like our family? Like, is this making me happy?
I mean, one of the questions I always ask people is, what skills do you think you've got, like natural or that you've learned that have made your career what it is? And obviously just listening to them already, you're quite clearly brave. You're happy to at 16 rocket to learn. Well, no, I think it's an. Do you know what? It at its core is that just a belief in yourself.
Yeah, and that is so important.
So then, what brought you back then?
So we got pregnant with our second daughter, and it was quite hard to sort of do that whole process in a country which you wouldn't believe. Lisbon at that time was relatively, it was pretty third world.
Yeah.
To be fair. Well, I wasn't speaking the same language.
Yeah.
as I was going to check up on my
Doctors,
the baby and the doctors and the midwives, and it was very hard because I'm not fluent Portuguese speaker. So I found myself combining my midwife appointments with work appointments in London, flying back, and then we sort of visited. We decided we were going to have Beatrice in England. So we flew back at that all important time.
Yeah,
and we were here in Devon and sort of just said, do you know what? Let's just stay here.
Yeah.
Life is so much easier, and with 2 children, young children as well.
And having a support network.
My mum was here, and we ended up staying by accident, really, and we're still here now, and we've had our third, our son, and just life has been rolling, freelance life, and so I've gone on to do a couple of other pretty crazy things in my career. And then I thought I might have a little change. 2 years ago, I just thought, am I going to continue working in the fashion business? Like, let's just sort of dip the toe in and see what other industries might look like.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember. So I just sort of noticed this role being advertised, head of communications at Boomtown Festival.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I thought, I've done that role before in the fashion business.
Yeah.
I mean, probably quite different, very different, a totally different scene for me. Yeah. Music, festivals, but it is
a love of yours.
Yeah, it's a space that I love.
Yeah.
And why not? I was so lucky. I got the role, which was very, very exciting.
Wow.
I was super excited about that. I think that the position started, and it was a lot to get my teeth into.
Yes.
Everything was new, and everything.
Was this COVID-y as well?
It was the first show that they put on after COVID.
After COVID, so
it was the resetting.
Bit of a strange new world.
It was a strange world anyway.
Well, quite.
Yeah, I bit off a lot.
Yeah.
But I did do the whole cycle. I wanted to see the whole year through, to see from start to finish what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
Which I did do. The festival itself was an immense experience. I think I might have a bit of PTSD.
Oh my gosh.
From that still.
And
because
I feel like coming from you, that's saying something.
It really
you
is.
feel like you're quite tough.
I am. But clearly not tough enough for that industry, I don't think. Wow. I mean, I was expecting the role as head of communications to be, it was very creative, but I was expecting it to be entirely creative. And I think that's a mistake I made, because actually as head of communications, obviously for a huge festival, 70,000 people.
There's a lot of politics.
Well, it's not the politics.
Oh.
It's more the crisis communications.
Oh, right.
Always, the crisis side of a festival is obviously huge.
Yeah.
And I hadn't prepared myself for that. Well, crisis communications is different in every sector, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
In the fashion business, obviously crisis communications I can deal with in that sector.
Yeah.
But when it comes to life and death, that's quite a frightening situation. And yeah, as much as I loved it, I had to move on. So, that brings me to today, really. In the last couple of years, I've continued to service my freelance clients. I have an ongoing, so I still continue to work in the emerging sector of the fashion business.
Yeah, because it's where your heart lies,
And also the sustainable side of everything. So I've got a number of, clients that work in the environmental sector.
Often I ask people about the process, or to touch on a bit about getting qualified and stuff, but you've very much described your route in as very hands-on, on the job. Have you ever done any qualifications?
I haven't.
No,
I really haven't.
That's okay.
And perhaps I should. And I have started thinking about doing again, not necessarily in the world of communications, because I do feel I've earned my stripes.
Yeah,
for that,
yeah.
You know
it.
And I'm very agile. I'm very, keen to know what the new things are, so I keep ahead of that as much as humanly possible. But other things that I've decided, I feel like I'd like to do something creatively with my hands at the moment, and I don't know if that's just a getting old thing.
Or it's just this creative gene in you that just needs to be expressed.
Maybe. So we are thinking about doing something on homeware at the moment. I'm also thinking about sort of learning how to do upholstery.
Yeah.
So that's something I'd like to explore.
Well, whatever you create, let's be honest about it, you're going to be very good at marketing it, aren't you?
Well, let's hope so. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
Oh, okay. So we've talked a bit about your positive skills. One thing I haven't asked you is, I guess, what challenging skills or challenging parts of you have always made this a bit tricky for you?
A couple of things. One is I like to move quickly. I like to move, swiftly. And with clients, if I come up with an idea, I like to know what the response is to that idea. And I like to, keep the ball rolling and move with poise. And, I want to get the job done.
Yeah.
And quite often, particularly if you're working with more corporate client, that's just not possible.
No.
The teams are huge on the other side.
And the approval process.
Can be such long.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do lose interest.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So
you're on to your next idea now, aren't you?
I really am. I am.
What has been the absolute best part of this so far, your whole career journey?
Well,
it doesn't have to be one thing.
I just think the excitement of it all. I still get excited to this day. So I think that the fact that no day is the same is the most important thing to me in this. And you just never know what's coming. So I find that really exciting. I'm very much fly by the seat of my pants kind of person.
But you've carved that out, haven't you? You've carved your career out to do that. Because a lot of people will just, can make their lives more predictable if they want to, can't they?
They can, and that's like the worst case scenario for me. And that actually leads me to the other thing that I was going to say about the challenge, probably a bit of a challenge for the sort of person I am, is I do tend to work in quite highly stressful situations. So I always think that I can achieve a lot more than is possible.
Right, okay.
So I set myself up.
So you've got this self-belief that's going, I can do it, I can do this.
And
But then life
sometimes I
comes-
set myself up for, wow, this is going to be a very stressful situation.
Right.
And I do thrive in that
Yeah.
situation. However, other people don't.
Yeah.
So I have to, I try to be mindful of that and not pile too much stress onto an already
People that
fairly
can't take it. Yeah.
stressful situation.
Okay. What's been not the worst part of your career, but the bit that maybe you've enjoyed the least, or the bit that's been...
I think that I am not really cut out for corporate companies.
Yeah.
I like to work in smaller settings because, like we were talking about just now, like decisions get made quicker.
Can you think of a strangest thing that's happened
Look,
to you?
I can. I don't know if your listener is going to enjoy this story very
I'm
much.
already... I can't wait.
But I did do a show in London. I won't mention the organisation because they might find it a bit embarrassing. But we did. Yeah, I was sort of looking after this show in London, and I had some really cool editors there, obviously, and the show went really well. But then after the show, one of the key editors had gone to the loo, and I was then catapulted into this whole situation whereby someone had actually taken a poo on the floor of that loo.
Oh gosh, I did not think any of this story was going there.
And I had to deal
What,
with
they
that
just
matter.
missed the toilet? Or
Who knows? If anyone can answer that question for me.
someone out there may have
To
actually
this
listened
day,
to this.
I'm racking my brains.
Wow.
Because you're in this high fashion,
You had a phantom pooer.
luxurious setting, and someone has had a poo on the floor in the loo.
What's next? Well, we've already sort of talked a little bit about you might sort of start
Well,
immersing
there
yourself
are-
into your creative...
Yeah,
Space.
so I want to sort of spread the love a little bit. I'd really like to, I want to spin less plates.
Yeah.
I'd like to do work. I want to continue to do work but more in a more deep and meaningful kind of way. So I have my clients that I will continue to work with in that way and have been for a number of years now. And then, like I said, start learn some new skills. And then I've got a couple of very interesting conversations going on at the moment.
Wow.
Which I can't really discuss right now.
My last two questions are always a bit of advice you would give your younger self. So that sort of, whether it's the Jen at school kind of really not enjoying it, or even the 16-year-old landing in London.
Yeah, I would say for this generation, because I would say just be ready to work really hard. Like
Wow.
if you want to make it, whether you've been to university or you've worked from the bottom like I did, or you've just got to be prepared to roll your sleeves up and work your absolute heart out.
Yeah.
Because that is noticed. That goes far and beyond any qualifications you might have. Your work ethic is paramount.
Well, my final question is always a bit of life advice to throw out there, which you've sort of almost touched on, but I don't know if you had any other bits of just, to women, men, anyone, just life advice that I think that you would like to help.
Just, I mean, it really is like the confidence thing again. Like, work on that.
Yeah.
Like, if
Well, yeah,
you
you've got
don't
to say, like, gut
feel,
feel, trust your gut,
yeah,
try and believe in yourself.
it's the only thing that's got me through.
Yeah.
Tenacity is also another thing. I think that in the career of a communications consultant, in all the very different varieties that can be, you do have to. You can't be too sensitive, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sensitivity, there isn't a huge place for that in this world.
Okay, yeah.
Because you are constantly being challenged, and constantly you have to fight your corner a lot, and get people onto your page to understand why you're thinking in a certain way, and why certain things and strategies will be good for them. Almost convincing them that is. So you do need to have balls of steel.
Or
This
find them,
business.
get them, yeah.
Yeah, and if you haven't got that and you're absolutely desperately wanting to get into the this workplace, then I would say find ways to work on that.
Yeah.
And trust your gut. That's I know that it's such a simple thing that probably a lot of people say, but honestly, if we could all just do that a little bit more, we'd get so much further.
It's your inner voice, isn't it? Sort of telling you what is
The inner
right
voice.
for you.
Shut the imposter out.
Yeah. I feel like there's a range of T-shirts should be...
Yeah, I like that actually.
Oh, well look, thank you very much, Jen. That has been fantastic.
Thank you. I hope it was interesting enough to make
It
the
was.
airwaves.
Give them.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some behind-the-scenes pics and some personal profile pics, plus read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go and support us on Patreon. The link is on this podcast page and across all of our socials. Sincere thanks in advance.